What I know about James is that he is a very, as I said in the session, a very courageous young man with a lot of heart. And he is trying to figure out how to be a black man in a society that is very racist. And he's trying to figure out how to be a gay man in a society and in a community, as he mentioned in referring to his uncle in the church, that is not accepting of other sexual identities. So he's trying to figure out how to be James and who James is. And as he said, he's struggling with the idea that he's just some confused black boy who's always making trouble. He's actually a very strong and a very deep thinker as well. And that's why he struggles so much, because he's trying to figure things out rather than just trying to kind of put them away and avoid them. What I see is a young man who has an enormous amount of ability to think through the biggest questions that any of us can face in life. And he hasn't really had any support for doing that. And again, not through the fault of anyone. But I don't think people have recognized how much James has on his mind. I think they've seen him just as a black kid who has struggled because he comes from a broken family. And I see much more. How to provide the space so that James can feel able and safe enough to ask the questions that he's asking of me. And these are tough questions, like how can I possibly understand being a black, or him being a black young man and me being a white man and a much older man as well. I've tried to provide the space by constantly asking James questions, but not to interrogate him, never, and not to put him on the spot, but to help him to put into words the questions that I think he's asking himself. So that's where I think I have to be very careful, because I'm sure that there are many questions that James has that I don't know how to really frame. But I'm trying to gradually get to know him well enough so that I can help frame the questions that he wants to ask of himself. And I think that many of those questions then apply to me, but sometimes they're going to be questions that he'll ask me when he's really asking James. So as long as the therapy is all about honoring questions and honoring the courage that it takes to ask the hard questions and not just settling for easy, quick answers. I have referred to the difference between James and me, the differences, in every session, because I think it's really important that he understands that I don't come into these sessions colorblind or with the fantasy of being colorblind, and that I recognize that the differences in our skin color that's just on the surface, but it goes much deeper. The experience that he's had, that his family has had, that generations of his family have had, that are so different, and his community, than experiences that I've had and that my ancestors have had. And the way in which they interact, such that white people have too often been the oppressors, have been the ones to put the knee on the back, as James literally experienced in that awful encounter with the law, who've literally been the ones who have spat on people who are black and people who are brown. And I just want James to know that without making a big deal about it and without trying to proclaim that I am an anti-racist, I want him to know that I am an anti-racist, that I recognize racism, and that it's something that I have to be vigilant and thoughtful about. And I want him to feel absolutely able to tell me when I step over the line, when I do something that is an unintended microaggression. And he's been really great about that. He's challenged me a number of times, and every time he does it, my first reaction is to kind of pull back and go, oh my goodness. And then my next reaction is, thank you. Thank you, James, because you are helping me and you're helping us have an honest relationship, in spite of the fact that there's so many reasons why we should have barriers between us that could never be taken down. And yet he's willing to help me take some of those barriers down. And for that, I thank him. I went back and forth between thinking, oh, this is horrendous, and how can this happen? And then when the police got involved, And I immediately, my mind flashed, of course, to George Floyd and to the awful things that have been happening between law enforcement and black people. And I thought, oh my gosh, this young man, he's so innocent, and this is spoiling everything. But not only that, it's teaching him that the oppressors are still out there and that he's a target. And so for the rest of the session, I think in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I can't reassure him. I can't say, oh, it's going to be all right, and there are nice police and there are not so nice police. And I can't give him any false reassurance, but I was thinking what I really need to be focusing on is where can he get that sense internally that he's not someone who just gets thrown around. That happened to him, but that's not who he is. And his strength is that when he woke up and found himself in that holding cell, somehow he held himself together. And then when his uncle was able to come for him, I mean, I felt a great sense of relief, but I also know that was really frightening for James. Because if his uncle judged him and criticized him at that point, I'm not sure how he would have handled that. I think he would have, but it would have been another trauma. And I breathed a deep sigh of relief when I heard that his uncle had been so understanding and caring. And I knew that's the foundation that we need to build on.
I don't know why I felt so comfortable speaking to him, but like it just poured out of me. Like it just came out. Working with a white therapist, it's different because it's like just ethnicity is different. Like he won't understand some things that I've gone through, and I won't understand some things he's gone through. But even though we still have those great differences, it still came together, and like we still got each other. Like we still understood. What really stood out for me in the call was that I actually communicated more. That I actually like spoke out and said stuff that I didn't think I was gonna really say. What stood out the most to me was that we actually talked about the difference in each other, the age difference, the ethnicity difference. That's what really stood out the most to me because I didn't really think he would understand where I was coming from, especially the way that he probably came up. It was definitely different than how I did. So I didn't think he would understand, but he really did understand, and he helped me understand more, honestly. At first it was pretty weird because it was a different dynamic than what I'm used to. 'Cause I'm usually used to the one-on-one in person, but it honestly felt more relaxing because I didn't feel pressure to actually like talk. Like when you're with someone, you feel like you need to actually say something, but on the call, the telehealth, it was more, it was more free.